You know that feeling when your work just seems like it's making itself? You might know this feeling if you've been creating for a while. Then you either scramble to get it all out, or you patiently create the right environment where a channel seems to open and the work just flows out of you. For my friend Sydney, the flow of her abstract paintings begins with pressing play. Today we're going to talk about how music is the channel between the soul of the creator and her creations. I'm Balvo, and I'm an artist.
I'm Sydney, and I'm a spiritual painter.
And this is Mind Over Matcha, where we share our everyday epiphanies, which are tiny droplets of wisdom with the potential to change the way you see the world. Take what you need, and leave the rest in the background.
I think when I'm starting from scratch and I've gessoed my canvas and I'm ready to put something down, some color. Funny enough, there is one artist and one song that literally puts me in the most beautiful vibration, and that is Anita Baker, Sweet Love.
Ooh.
Every time I play that song, it's something about the melody and the words that I normally just start dancing first. I'll start with Anita Baker, play that song, and dance actually. I'll kind of dance with my canvas in a way, just to kind of get the energy in the room flowing.
I love it.
And when I tell you, you can't tell me nothing in that moment. It's just pure ecstasy, freedom, positivity, and it sets the tone for whatever I'm gonna say. I try not to think too deep about it. I just go with the flow of my emotions, and I start and I begin and I release and I let go.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love it.
Mm-hmm.
I love that you start with your whole body.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What do you think it is about engaging your entire body with the process that helps you enter the realm?
That's actually a really good question. I've actually never thought of it. I don't know. I think I'm just giving my full self to the work. You know, when I set myself up in that way, and I'm really inviting, inviting art to meet me halfway, and creativity to meet me halfway. I don't even feel like I'm on Earth. The best way I can explain it is do you ever feel when you're daydreaming, you know, if you're ever in a daydream, you know that you're daydreaming, but you don't know that you're daydreaming until after the daydream is over, right?
Yes.
So it's a lot of times I will enter into the sweet spot and not, no, I know I was painting, but I'll say this as an example. I'll never forget this one piece that I did called Still Gods, and it was an ode to my ancestors. I didn't originally think that I was creating work that was, I guess, calling in my ancestors or representing my ancestors, and it's one of my first pieces that actually sold. And I just remember light was out, right? It must have been at least 1 or 2 o'clock, maybe 2:30 or something like that. The light was still up. I was going. All of a sudden, I looked outside and it was dark. And I was like, where have I been for these 3 hours? Where have I been? I went somewhere and I just came back to earth. And I will never forget, that was my very first experience, I think, aside from when I used to kind of paint outside when I first started, being I just was zone out. I'm not here, I'm somewhere else. And it's almost coming out of a daydream, oh snap, where was I? You're present, you're breathing, and you're here, but consciously you're not really here. So I think that if you're fortunate enough to experience that, it's just really cool and part of the creative process. And so yeah.
So Sydney and I met a year or two before the pandemic happened,
Yes.
speaking of weird news.
Yes.
And I think we were both kind of in a healing phase at that time, right? Really needing to reconnect with our purest selves. And I made some music, I made an album, I started socializing with younger artists and sometimes mentoring younger artists. I began to see myself as a fuller conceptual artist rather than just a music person. What was your timeline like from that period? Because I feel like we both have had a little journey in the last few years.
Yeah, I think that period was so much of a time where I was unlearning.
Yes.
I was stripping down this false version of myself to become who I truly am today, and still becoming, right? Still evolving. Because like everything that I thought I was, I really wasn't. And I was just like more of a, that was like generated by like society. Like I was like in a corporate job, and I was in a relationship that was not aligned with me, or no longer aligned with me. And I don't know, I felt sort of lost, but like thankfully found in a way, because I was curious about searching for my truest self, like my most authentic version of myself. So yeah, I was being stripped down. I was naked at that time. I was just like, I don't know, like where are my clothes? Like, but it felt good. It felt freeing, but also scary, because then I was just like, okay, well, who am I? Now I have to ask myself, like, who am I? And I was on that journey to search to find who I was and become just this version of me, this like little hippie artist, fairy child.
I think a lot of that process for you was through beginning to paint. I remember when you started with pieces of cardboard, right?
Don't make me cry. Like, yo, oh man, that was such a gentle time for me. It was like, I don't know why it's making me cry, because it's like, ooh, that was like the purest version of me, because I had nothing. I feel like I lost everything. I didn't know who I was. The only thing that made me feel good was art. Like, the only thing that made me feel good every day, waking up. I didn't have a job at the time, and then the pandemic happened, so I was even more lost. I was like, oh wow, like the world's about to end. But the only thing that literally made me happy every day was knowing that like I could get up, make some orange juice and a little muffin, and go outside in the sunshine, in the grass, no shoes, and paint for hours and hours and hours. And I was just like, this is the only thing that makes me feel good. And I was searching for like what made my soul feel good versus like what society says I'm supposed to be doing and what it looks like and this and that. Like my soul was quenched every time I would go outside and paint and be in the sun. And it's so fitting that we're outside, because this is where it all started. Like there's nothing like being outside in the grass barefoot, just grounding and being like, I remember like hummingbirds would visit me when I was painting, butterflies, bees, birds. Like I was just like, that's why I call myself a fairy. Like that's where I feel most alive and like happy. Painting outside in the grass with the birds and the bees and the trees. Yeah.
You're from Southern California, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you grow up like in the city in LA?
Well, I grew up in Altadena actually. So I'm used to being around trees and nature. Not a lot of traffic. Like me and my friends would ride our bikes down the street and get lost. And I was definitely a nature kid. We would jump off the roof sometimes. We would just find stuff to do. We were bored. We would throw water balloons at cars. We were kind of bad, like, but good bad. But yeah, no, I was definitely like a kid, like outside in the elements, and like come back when the street lights come on and kind of thing. And then it was funny because like the street I grew up on, my grandmother lived up the street. So like I would just go in between those homes and like go up and visit my grandmother's house. She had this huge backyard and a swing set for us. I would make like soup. I would like grab oranges from the tree and make like goulashes. And like I was definitely a kid, like outside, just having fun.
What was your music or your relationship with music growing up during those times?
Funny, I mentioned my grandmother because she was probably, I mean, my whole family introduced me to music, but I grew up around musicians, basically. So my grandmother played the piano, my aunt played the piano, and my uncle played the trumpet. My mom was supposed to play the piano, but she she skipped out on her classes as a kid. But my grandmother basically put them all in like classes to learn an instrument. And like being that my grandmother lived up the street, I was always between homes, like my home and my grandmother's home. And so I would enter my grandmother's home. A lot of times we'd go over there for dinner or something like that. And if she wasn't playing the piano, there was some Al Green playing, some like old school like soul music playing. She always was playing music, so that was always something that I heard. But it was really cool when we had like concerts. Like my grandmother would sit down and play the piano, then my aunt would get on. My uncle was always playing the trumpet in the backyard. But yeah, I grew up around musicians, and my mom and my dad both like really have a great ear. Like they both love jazz music, so they always like had music playing, whether I was like in the car. Like 94.7 The Wave was probably the one station that like I knew every hymn, every like jazz song, like I knew by heart, because that was like really the only station my mom would play in the car. My mom and my dad definitely introduced me to jazz music. And then I do remember like my oldest brother giving me this CD when I was probably like maybe like in middle school, and it was like neo soul, and that was the first time I like actually heard neo soul, like Angie Stone and some Music Soul Child. And so props to my oldest brother Shannon for giving me that album, because that introduced me to neo soul, and then I just explored on my own like music in general. So it's always been around me, so it's just natural that I just love it and gravitate to it. Ooh,
Some tea.
Some fresh matcha made by wow, thank you for this.
Thank you.
Cheers. Wow.
Ooh, it's dank today.
Wow. Wow. That tastes like earth.
Yeah.
Wow.
So one of my favorite things about your paintings is I think you have a really good internal sense of color. Like a lot of people take a long time to come to their personal palette. It seems like you were kind of born with your personal palette. And like, you know, like your work just, it looks like you.
You know, that's like literally the best compliment you could ever have given me as an artist. My work reflects me. Like
It looks like you.
I always say that. I said I think the best artists look like their work. They favor their work. It's like an extension of their spirit and their soul. So like when I see that with people, I'm like, oh, I see your spirit. I see your soul through your work. That's such a beautiful thing. I think that's like what art is supposed to be.
When you were talking about stripping down how you define yourself and kind of starting from a blanker slate, isn't it weird how when we're in that image of ourselves that like we got from society and family and work and school and stuff, that we're so sure of who we fucking are at that time?
Well, honestly, funny enough, like, I don't know, I feel like a lot of people too are like in this like hamster wheel zombie place where we're not present enough to even feel that we're not in alignment, you know?
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying.
It's just like
we're so sure of this is how I am.
But I wasn't though. I wasn't deep down.
Yeah.
I actually wasn't. I felt like consciously I was like I was happy because like, oh, like I was doing it and I had this corporate job, and outside looking in it looked good, but inside internally like there was something inside that was like, no, it's not right. It doesn't feel like what I feel now, like seated in myself, like fully and like sure, confident, comfortable. I knew there was more versions of myself I hadn't unlocked. I'll say that. So there was like this inner knowing that like, no, there's more. And also when you're younger, you just don't know. You haven't lived life long enough to like actually know for sure anyway. Like I'm thinking of myself at 21, like what? I was just partying and I was like just like, yeah, make money, party. And
do you think something needs to happen to kind of shake us out of that?
Your Saturn return, of course. Do you know what that is? Like when it's like in the zodiac world, it's like I think it's around like 28 years old where like your whole life comes crashing down. And that's happened to me. That was my Saturn return. Is that like I got laid off. I never told people I got laid off from my corporate job, and then I was in a 10-year relationship and was engaged and thought I was going to marry this man. Had totally gone different, paths. Or grew apart, I should say. And yeah, everything I thought I was supposed to do and continue doing crashed.
Yeah.
So that I could then again start over and become who I wanted to be and discover what made me truly happy. And it was hard though, because like a lot of times family members are not supportive. People are like, what the heck are you doing?
Yep.
Like, but it feels good to me though. It feels good to me and I feel aligned, but society, outside looking in, it's not, so. But I've always been, I think the reason why I said no to that question is like, I've always been like a brave soul. Like, I don't care what people think. Like, I've always been the outspoken one, like speak up and say like something's wrong. Like, I've always been just like that as a kid. So like, I'm not afraid to like color outside the lines or like break the rules. We're both Aquarius, so we break rules naturally. So I was just like, yeah, something ain't right. Like it feels okay for now just because like I'm in alignment with society, but internally it doesn't. And I think like I actually had an aha moment, and I'll never forget. I sat down and I was meditating. I had turned in my key to, or I was about to turn in my key and like move out of my apartment with my ex, and I was, on unemployment, I guess, because I, was trying to figure out my next job, and I just sat Indian style on my floor, and I said some affirmations, and for the first time, maybe, or the second time in my life, I felt my soul like do a backflip.
Ooh.
When I tell you, when you feel that, and your soul's like, hi, what's up? I'm here. Like, again, back to like being in the zombie state. I think we're in this zombie state. We're all in our mind. We're like, okay,
Yeah.
hamster wheel, without being in our body and
Yeah.
feeling our body and feeling our soul and our spirit. We're spirits having a human experience, right? So I think I said, I am love, I am peace, and I said something else. I can't remember all the affirmations. I know I said I am love, and like my inside of here just got really warm, and it just literally felt like there was like a spinning ball of warmth inside of me, just going like, yay, like celebrating.
Wow.
Like we're here, we're back now, let's begin. And then I moved out of that apartment and back home, and I was in the grass painting probably like 2 months later. And that's like really how it happened. That's what clicked for me in that moment. So simple.
I'm so glad we touched on this. Maybe I will keep it in the episode.
Yeah.
Because I feel like maybe I was in my early 30s when that happened.
Okay.
And I've always been a very high achieving young person. And because of that, I had this like pressure to achieve and perform, self-imposed, clearly. And I was just going super hard without really evaluating what it meant for me, like my soul, I guess.
Yeah.
And it wasn't very immediate after everything fell apart for me. It took so many years, reaching out in all sorts of directions to either self-soothe or find meaning in various circles and other people or whatever. And so when you talk about your experience, I was like, shit, I wish it was that fast for me.
Yeah, no.
But firstly, it took longer, right? I was in my 30s when I realized everything I've been doing up to this point has been autopilot, has been zombie mode.
Autopilot.
And it's expectations from family, from society, blah, blah, blah. And like, some of it nourished me, but like on a very surface level, right? And it took me so many years to like leave all that baggage and actually do things that nourish me on a deeper level. And I am so grateful for that very painful period where I was like, damn, I don't even know who I am because I've been following this one thing so hard all my life, but now there's this other thing, these other things. And like coming to terms with how narrow your life has been to that point was so hard for me. It's so disorienting and so full of self-doubt.
Oh my God, it's hard, yeah.
Yeah.
But thankfully it happened, you know?
I mean, I think it happens for everyone if they want it, if they want at some point to face themselves, to embrace themselves, to let that person do backflips.
I think, speaking of COVID, I think a lot of people, that's the thing, the way the system's set up is like, you don't have time to think. You're going, and like, pay your bills. You're in this like rat race kind of mentality and energy to where we don't they don't give us time to stop and be present. And because COVID made us all stop and pause, I feel like a lot of people had their awakenings during that time too, because you were able to just sit with yourself. And I think a lot of people, I think we teach love is, we don't teach enough about like self-love. That's where it all starts. Like you can't even love anybody unless you love yourself first. And that was also another journey of like, when we were talking about stripping ourselves down, it was like, now I had to like love this version of myself that felt so like I had nothing to show. I had nothing. How do you love yourself when you have nothing? There's no accolades, there's no job, there's no money, there's no person behind you. It's just you naked, bare.
Damn.
That's why like y'all can't tell me nothing, man. The way that I got up out of that dark space and loved myself, I did mirror affirmations. I looked myself in the eye, told myself I love you. I was at like probably my lowest, and like then just like blossomed into my highest version of myself and the most authentic version of myself. I don't even know if I can say the highest version of myself. I think I'm always reaching for that, because maybe I've touched it a little bit, but I think it's always
highest for
higher,
now.
higher. But authentic for sure, because I just was like, it's like once you lose everything and then you find love within yourself and you learn to love that version of yourself, you're just like, okay, well, I didn't need all this stuff anyway. So like, let me just figure out what makes me feel good and happy and like honor that instead of what makes me look good, right, to society, right? So once I did that, I was just like, okay, cool. I'm gonna paint. I'm gonna show up authentically and check in with myself and see like, is this in alignment with me? Does this make me feel good? And just be more in tune with my soul and my spirit. And haven't looked back ever since. It feels good to be here.
Sydney, that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Cheers to that authenticity.
That's beautiful. So I will have shown a couple snapshots of your work in this video.
Okay.
But if anyone's watching and wants to see more of your work or like say hi and tell you how cool you are, how can they do that? Where can they do that?
So really just Instagram is my main platform. So my Instagram name is Sydney, SYDNEE, Bethel_art. My real name, funny enough, fun story, want to throw in, my real name is actually Sydney. Like there's an accent on my name. And like for the longest, everyone's been calling me Sydney. And like, I think I was probably like 10 or 11. And one day I saw, like, I remember seeing the accent on my report cards when I was a kid, but I never like was concerned with it. I was just like, what, did I get an A? Did I get a B? Whatever, right? One day I went to my mom, I think it was like my social security card. And I was like, Mom, what is this like accent thing on my name? She's like, oh yeah, your name is actually Sydney. And I was like,
so cute.
You're gonna tell me this like
10
years later, and you tell me that like you've been calling me Sydney. You never said she never said my name was Sydney. Like never even like had a little side convo with me. And I found out that way. And so my actual legal name is actually Sydney with like an accent on it. So when I do like my art shows and stuff, I always go by Sydney because I feel like that's truly me. That's like my birth name, like my most.
That's your core.
Yeah, that's who I am. So
Heck yeah.
So yeah, Sydney, but Sydney Bethel_art.
What a beautiful way to catch up and also dive a little deeper into your creative mind.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful that you and I that we got to share a little bit about our journey in the last few years.
Yeah.
Of for you, it's finding more definition of yourself in abstract art, which is like, what? How do you find more definition in something so abstract, right? And I think that's such a beautiful path, and I'm so glad that you're being validated and celebrated for your, like, this. You set an intention to paint, and you just went and did it. And that's scary to a lot of people. And I really think that you know, like you went hard at it because that's just how you are.
Yeah.
And I think that's so beautiful. I'm so glad that we get to see what comes out of that.
Thank you, Val. And thank you. I want to give you your flowers because honestly, I don't think you know how much of an influence you had on me during that time because like I didn't really have a lot of people that were close to the art world, and like you really like actually opened my eyes up to like galleries, and like there's an actual world out here. Like you kind of brought me out of my backyard into the actual space, because like when I was creating back then, like I didn't think about a career. I was just doing this because it made me feel good. Like, you know, it was like a healing, cathartic thing, and it still is now, but I didn't connect the dots. Like, oh, I can take my actual work and I can actually showcase it and like be in different spaces. And like, I'll never forget, we went to Hauser and Wirth for the first time. You took me. I think we also went to the Annenberg of exhibit at it was like the hip hop photography exhibit, and that was like my first 2 times where I've been to like, you know, galleries and like actually saw work that inspired me and like got out of like my backyard and into like the world. So thank you for just being a great usher and like a good friend too. Like, you've seen me in the beginning. You saw me from my most rawest version of myself, from scratch, from like the baby version of me, and now just growing into more of myself. So thank you for being
I love you.
I love you too. Thank you for
I'm
just
so
your
glad you
presence
exist here. I'm so glad you exist here.
Yo, same. And then look at us here, and like I'm just so proud of you too, and like all your endeavors and everything that you've been doing. I've seen the growth within you too, and I'm very proud of you. Yeah.
Thank you. You guys, smash that like button.
Yeah.
No, I feel like some stuff we talk about here is so relatable and so helpful for people who might be kind of feeling wishy-washy about who they are, what they're doing. And so if that applies to you, I mean, please share it, you know, share this around. Thank you so much for joining us for Mind Over Matcha. We'll see you next time.